Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 5. I hope you've had a good week. If you haven't checked yet, all the grades for the introductory paper are on Canvas. Caitlin and I have left you comments in your paper, so if you have any questions, please make sure to reach out to us and we can talk about your paper. Otherwise, we look forward to reading the discussion posts that you just finished doing for week 4. And so let's get started with week 5. Okay, so this week we continue our discussion of constructions of Blackness and continue to talk about the various different kinds of the images that have been created and upheld by the media to talk about African Americans. And we begin with the chapter from the book focusing on the image of Black men as criminals. So one of these, this is one of these controlling images that still exists today, particularly for Black men. This is an expansion of the image of the Black male rapist that we talked about before, where now he's considered not only a rapist, but someone who commits all sorts of crimes, including stealing, drug dealing, being members of gangs, and so on. The reading discussed the discrepancies among media outlets and how they are 10 times more likely to portray people of color as criminal offenders and 7.5 times more likely to portray people of color as evil in comparison to whites. While in contrast, when the media depicts mass shooters, the majority of which have been white, they are portrayed as either mentally ill and coming from good families. These portrayals result in African Americans experiencing discrimination in employment and housing, where employers hesitate in hiring Black individuals, and also white neighbors flee neighborhoods when African Americans move in. They're also discriminated in housing because they are believed to bring down the value of homes in the area. So when showing an African-American family, for example, houses, some realtors might decide not to show them certain neighborhoods where they think that bringing in a Black family might lead to either the neighbors complaining or the values of that area coming down. We also see how the image of Black men as criminals becomes the justification for police shootings, where the explanation often given is that the Black person is believed to have been carrying a weapon. Finally, the image of the Black male criminal facilitates what are called racial hoaxes, where white individuals commit crimes and fabricate a story where the criminal was a Black male. The fact not only that white individuals know to use this as a potential viable cover for their own crimes, but that it is actually believed and used in the media when conducting the initial reporting of these crimes indicates the power of this image. The reading discusses the injustices found within the criminal justice system and who benefits from these. As the reading explains, there's an overrepresentation of Black men in jails, and also there are disparities in sentencing between Black and white offenders and what they receive in terms of sentences. This increase in Black men in jails coincides with the rise of private prisons. Those owners of these prisons benefit from the increase in imprisonment of African Americans and other people of color by making profits. Corporations also benefit from the existence of a large prison population through the prison lease system, where prisoners provide significantly cheaper labor and have no say on whether they participate as laborers for these companies. And the clip that this link will take you to talks about this system historically and up to today. The image of Black male criminals results in racial profiling, as the reading talked about. And racial profiling is the use of race when profiling a criminal suspect. We saw in the reading the cases of profiling drivers where one of the measures used in deciding whether to pull over a driver was whether their race matched the car they were driving. In other words, the assumption is that Black men cannot possibly be able to afford more expensive vehicles unless they are involved in some kind of criminal activity like selling drugs. Another example of the use of racial profiling is in the stop and frisk policies, where predominantly Black men, but also other men of color, are targeted for random stops in the street and are frisked while officers search for potential drugs or weapons. In New York City, young people of color experienced 40% of the stops, even though they only comprise 4.7% of the city's population. The justification for these types of policies is allegedly to reduce crime. However, as we saw in the reading, the police commissioner stated that the goal of the policy was to instill fear in people of color so that every time they leave their home, they could be stopped by the police. And so you're socializing these folks to expect police to stop and frisk them. Federal investigations into these policies and into police shooting cases have consistently found Black men's constitutional rights are violated by these policies. And in this image here from a study conducted in 2015, you see again some of these discrepancies being depicted of people who experience the threat or use of force when they are most recently approached by police. You can see there that whites get the least, are least likely to experience this versus Blacks and Hispanics. The next reading by Patricia Hill Collins, when this was not from the book, this is on Canvas, talks about the numerous kinds of controlling images that affect women in particular, and it kind of builds on and expands our discussion from last week on some of these controlling images. So one of these images is the mammy image. We talked about this last time, where it's the ideal image of Black women. They're a sexual mothers to white children, but not to her own children. She's expected to be submissive and obedient, and she's happy to serve the white family. This influences contemporary expectations of Black professional women in the workforce, as the reading by Patricia Hill Collins discussed, where there's still sort of this expectation or treatment of Black women in professional positions today as having these kinds of characteristics in order to make them less threatening to their co-workers. Sorry about that. And as the image, as the reading states, the mammy image buttresses the ideology of the cult of true womanhood, one in which sexuality and fertility are severed. Good white mothers are expected to deny their female sexuality. In contrast, the mammy image is one of an asexual woman, a surrogate mother in blackface, whose historical devotion to her white family is now giving way to new expectations. Contemporary mammies should be completely committed to their jobs. So that's sort of the previous mammy was expected to be completely committed to the white family that she was serving. Contemporary Black professional women are expected to be completely devoted to the jobs that they are working in. Another image the reading talked about was the image of the bad matriarch. This image emerged through the Moynihan report from the 1960s, which argued that Black matriarchs were emasculating men and were the reasons for the downfall of the Black family. This was a way to erase the economic and racist reasons for the actual demise of the Black family. The matriarch symbolizes the bad Black mother, while the mammy symbolized the good Black mother. Matriarchs were believed to be overly aggressive, unfeminine women. This theory of the matriarch assumes that poverty is passed on intergenerationally and that Black children lack the attention and care given to white middle-class families. So again, it's sort of blaming the mother for these results. The discourse of the Black matriarch serves as a warning to both white and Black women as to what can happen to women who challenge patriarchal power. As the reading states, aggressive, assertive women are penalized. Sorry, I don't know why my PowerPoint here keeps skipping ahead. But as I was saying, aggressive, assertive women are penalized, they're abandoned by their men, end up impoverished, and are stigmatized as being unfeminine. Many Black men reject Black women as marital partners, claiming that Black women are less desirable than white ones because they are perceived to be too assertive. Another image that the reading talks about is the welfare mother, which particularly targets poor working class women. This image is reminiscent of the breeder image from slavery that we talked about last time. It allows for the control of Black women's reproduction because the assumption is that these women have a lot of children solely for the purposes of being able to get more money from the welfare system. She's depicted as a bad mother, just like the matriarch, but unlike the matriarch, she's not aggressive enough. She's not aggressive enough to sort of control her children and be able to keep a man so that she wouldn't have to be on welfare. The image of the welfare queen was created by the Republican Party in the 1980s with the story of this particular woman, Linda Taylor, which the video at this link tells you about. And so this one particular woman's experience and behavior was generalized to be for all Black women who are on welfare. Another image that is talked about in the reading is that of the Black lady. This image counters the image of the welfare queen. It's particularly addressing professional Black women who worked hard and achieved much, and fits sort of images of respectability. But these women are also considered unfeminine because they were dedicated to their work and thus couldn't keep a man. So this is sort of the narrative attached to these particular women. But they're also, like the welfare queen, perceived as being dependent on the state by benefiting from affirmative action programs, allegedly taking jobs that should go to more worthy people, particularly white men. Finally, we have the image of the Jezebel, who constructs Black women as sexually deviant, promiscuous, and out of control. But also, by making her sexually aggressive, the image also masculinizes Black women, taking on a more male sexual role, and again, making her unfeminine or unwomanly. Institutional support for controlling images as seen in, for instance, popular culture and the dissemination of images through hip hop in a globalized world, especially when artists don't really control their music, is part of what was discussed in the reading. Also in the focus of studies on Black women's deviant sexuality and in the targeting of Black female adolescents for birth control methods like Norplant, this image is used. Again, sort of this idea that women are out of control sexually, and so their reproductive and sexual behavior needs to be controlled. And so that results in policies that target this particular population for extreme forms of birth control. And the link here will take you to a brief clip that continues this discussion of some of these controlling images, bringing it up to more contemporary examples. The reading talks about the difficulties of challenging these images. It talks about how Black organizations and how these can be both empowering spaces to challenge some of these images, but how at the same time they can be limiting, where Black women learn to subordinate their own issues for the purpose of racial unity. She also talks about how some of these definitions of manhood from the Moynihan report are internalized by Black men. And so that also challenges, right, the ability of Black women to be able to challenge some of those images. And that there are also resistance from within the Black community to critique of the Black family. And finally, she discusses how men within the Black nationalist movements bought into definitions of manhood created by this Moynihan report. And that also serves as another source of a challenge for or difficulty for them to be able to challenge some of these controlling images. The reading also talked about beauty standards and colorism, sort of how these images affect some of these things. And so, for instance, controlling images manifest themselves in some of these standards of beauty, where there's a preference for lighter skinned Black women in professional settings, but at the same time, there's some dangers experienced by some of these light skinned women, as the reading talked about sexual assault, for instance. But the reading also talked about what are some of the ways in which some of these images are resisted by Black women, and some of the mediums they use to resist and challenge some of these images. For instance, she talked about Black authors using literature to portray the impact of some of these controlling images and also to challenge them. Denial, she said, is another characteristic response to the controlling image of Black womanhood and their accompanying conditions, by claiming that they're not like the rest of other African-American women. They reject these connections to other Black women, and it's a protective way to protect themselves from some of those controlling images, to be able to say, well, I'm not like, right, those other Black women who do fit into some of those stereotypes. Writers and filmmakers also demonstrate examples of the process of personal growth toward positive self-definition, as seen in some of the examples that she talks about, like the film Waiting to Exhale. Many of these examples demonstrate women engaging in this process in a community of other Black women. And so it serves as a model for other Black women to potentially follow. Emergent women have found that one way of surviving the everyday disrespect and outright assaults that accompany controlling images is to do what she calls, quote unquote, turning it out. This is the moment when silence becomes speech, when stillness becomes action. And this is the one of those moments where you see depicted in films by Black women, in literature by Black women, where you find some of these Black female characters that are speaking back, that they're not staying silent, that they're not, just kind of accepting these experiences, but are actually challenging them. And this clip is an example, and a contemporary example of what turning it out looks like. Okay, so that ends our discussion for today, or for this week. If you have any questions, as always, you can reach me via email. Otherwise, I will see you week 6, so when we move on to the next subject of discussion. Hope you all have a good week. Take care.